Welcome everybody to Cycle Jerks Podcast, episode 109. I'm Mike Stewart, your host, and I got my co-host Dave Dalton, who's on vacation in Cape Cod. And we're very excited to have with us returning guest, Ben Frederick. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. One of the things I love about this podcast is that we get to start at 6:30 a.m. And so I have nice good morning voice. It's like answering the phone, like when you're asleep. You have to like do a couple hello, 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 hello,
Yeah.
hello. That's how I
Yes.
feel right now.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
great. Good to see your smiling faces.
Yeah.
yeah. And for those that didn't listen to the first episode, I actually missed the podcast. I was on vacation, and but I've listened, and but I think for everybody on the that's listening to this podcast, maybe we could do a little recap of your story and how you got involved with the Love Your Brain Foundation and the Small Monsters Project, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, if I could, the reason I was so anxious to have you back is your story was so incredible, right? One of the main reasons I wanted to have you on, other than, obviously it is a great story, but I did want to get to the Small Monsters Project because I'm all about supporting these things. And we talked I think, for over an hour, and we barely got to it. And you said, because that's how fascinating the story is, right?
Yeah.
If that's the right choice of words. So, uh, getting, you said your last words were, "Yeah, have me back," because we didn't get to the good stuff yet. And I'm thinking, oh my God, if we didn't get to the good stuff. So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, a recap, and then let's move. That's cool.
Yeah, awesome. No pressure, past Ben. So uh, let's see. I was able to, yeah, the quick version is I was um, a I was racing at the professional level and on the bike, and I was getting kind of like old for these things and had really kind of put myself out there in a way where it's like make it or break it. And this is in 2016. I had a really good cross season the year before, and going into the 2 weeks before the opening race of the year where I was really going to show everyone what I was capable of. I had a kind of a freak training accident and hit my head. Um, and the way I hit my head was felt at the time pretty innocuous, and kind of knew I rung my bell, but didn't lose consciousness, didn't have any other real like injuries, and then got up and like started to ride again, and then I knew something really wasn't right. And so over the next week, I I had gotten a concussion, and at the time it was either you know buck up and keep going is like concussion recovery, or you know sit in a dark room, don't have any stimulus, don't look at screens, whatever, and then you'll be fine soon. Um, and so 4 days turned into a week, which turned into 2 weeks, which turned into what ended up being over a year and a half recovery process from accident to whatever my new normal ended up being. Um, and so it was a pretty heavy thing to go from like my full identity being bike racer to just trying to be a human being again who could like read a book before bed and listen to music or even just go out to dinner with your friends. Um, and so I had taken a step back from the bike world. Um, I had sworn off biking at one point just because nothing was worth feeling how I did in that time. Um, but then slowly found the bike again, slowly found the wonderful community. I was living in Massachusetts at the time, and they had really helped lift me up and gave me an avenue back to ride. And my sponsors at the time stuck with me through the whole deal, and started riding, started having fun, and I had some pretty good results given that I was working 40 hours a week at a Whole Foods and having a full social life, and was still able to get some UCI podiums. Um, and then COVID hit, and the world just kind of like shut down for a while. And so then
It
going into
did? Did it
2021,
really?
yeah, surprise.
Oh my God.
Going into 2021, I did there was a really cool opportunity where the World Cup, Cyclocross World Cup, had 3 races in the US within a week. And all of the UCI points had been reset. And so it was just wide open playing field. Let's see what happens. And I was living in Boulder at the time, and my lovely partner gave her buy-in to try to see, like, you know, could I do the thing that I wanted to do? You know, I guess that was 5 years before. And in doing so, I didn't want to do it shouting about myself. I didn't want to be like, look at me and what I'm doing. I wanted to kind of make it something bigger and broader and, you know, more outward facing than inward facing. And so I started the Small Monsters Project. And at the time, it was just kind of like bring mental health to the surface, have it be a conversation, not something that's hidden. And so, you know, I equate the monsters to like your mental health monsters. Like if you put them in the closet, and they just get bigger and bigger, and then they end up taking over your whole life. But if you can bring them out into the light, have them on your sleeve, kind of like just own your truth, they become a lot smaller and something you can live with. So that was part of it. That's kind of the name of where the Small Monsters Project came. And then I wanted to work with have it be a fundraising effort. And so Love Your Brain is a nonprofit based out of Vermont, and they do a lot of really good work with what life looks like after a concussion or brain injury. So it was just a conduit to try to, raise the public consciousness and really try to do some good. And so, glossing over a very up and down few weeks, I was able to make all 3 of the World Cup teams do the World Cup thing, which, as I guess a 32-year-old, was pretty wild, to be able to go up against the kids and line up against some of the best in the sport. And then, based on the feedback that I got, and I mean, we raised, I think, $21,000 the first year. So going into the second year, I mean, obviously people were interested, and I had moved to San Francisco during that time, and last year was also a pretty big year. I got to race my single speed all over the country as the, I guess, reigning single speed national champion. We raised, I think, $36,000 last year for Love Your Brain, and something really, it was really impactful, that people really cared, and also glossing over the fact, listen to that first app. I got to race in Europe against Matthew, and Matthew, who just, spoiler, won the world championship yesterday. I was in the same races as those guys, which is just unreal.
I bet.
Again, and ticking that box of like, all I did was watch those races on the trainer, or like, sneak it in, like in a small window at work, to try to like keep up with what was going on. And there I was, lining up at Deakin and Lowenhout and Coxside and all these crazy races.
Wow.
So anyway, there was a platform, there was interest. And so at the beginning of last year, I decided to make the Small Monsters Project its own entity, where we have a mission of providing education and resources around concussion and TBI, and then also helping to reduce the stigma around mental health. And it kind of gives me a little bit more of a specific, right now, impact into cycling, But it's going to be, I mean, we'll go into it, but it's, you know, my vision is much broader than just riding bikes. And so, yeah, you know, since we talked, it's become my part-time job, which is both scary and exciting,
Uh-huh.
and something that, yeah, it's all eyes forward, and we're about to come into the fall, which is where, you know, the first round of the works that we're doing are going to get actioned. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
Hey, so two things. One is I think a comment, then a question. I think it's important, right? I mean, because you used the word before, like soldier on, push through, right? And you know, I
Hmm.
just got done. I'm a late to the party, and I just got done. I'm only partway through because I was saving it for my flight to Cape Cod. Um,
Hmm.
the Tour de France, Unchained, right? And in that,
Hmm.
there's, you know, some guy actually ripped his muscle off of his like buttocks or his thigh, and the coach is like, "Well, just give us one more day, like muscle through." And another guy had a concussion or something, and you know, he rode, finished the stage, but he did. So that's like, I think we all have to get past that mindset, right? Of you've got to push
Hmm.
through it because clearly things linger or rear their ugly head later, right? I mean,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
so you could comment on that, but the other thing is, my question is, so you had this period you're racing, you have this injury, you get off the bike for a while, and now you're back on the bike and kicking ass, or we're kicking ass. But does it still linger? Like, I mean, do you still have these recurring monsters that you have to deal with you have to overcome in order to get on the bike and to get up and go to work every day? Is it something that goes away, or is it something that just
Um,
lingers?
I think, well, so there's, you know, just to address the comment about just the soldier on mentality, like that's why I'm here. That's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, the first thing, if you go to the resources page on my website, like the very first thing is like, if you take yourself out of the game, whatever it is, whether it's like going to work or whatever, if you really focus on that in the first 24 hours, it could reduce your time to recovery by like days. And if anyone's had a concussion, and has felt just how off you feel, uh, yeah, I would take days off if I could, instead of just trying to like push through for 3 or 4 days, and then that extends it, you know, a while. So, yes, to your point, we're trying to change the conversation. I'd love to
Got
make
yeah,
it so
have
that
to.
like if it, you know, right now, if you were to, you know, be playing soccer, whatever, and fall and like break your arm, like obviously you don't play, right? You
Yeah.
stop playing, you address the fact that something is wrong, but there's no reason that you can't play soccer again, right? You go through the recovery modalities, you fix the problem, you don't aggravate it by continuing to use it, whatever. There's like there's a clear path, and then it's like, okay, cool. So yes, it sucks that you break your arm, but it's kind of no big deal. um, a lot of the literature coming out in the past, even just 3 4 years, shows that my situation, where it was a very long recovery process, is like in the single digits of percent possibility. Over
Wow.
90% of people, can recover or do recover, in 28 days, can be completely back to return to sport um, without any, you know, any worries about like second impact syndrome or having any symptoms. So it's really interesting, that conversation. So again, we can go more into that later, but um, I do have lingering symptoms, and I wouldn't say it's like necessarily something that I would call like symptoms anymore. It's just like, it's just kind of my reality. It's my new normal.
Hmm.
So beyond just being like an athlete, uh, like I really have to focus on sleep, because if I don't get, if I'm, too tired, both either mentally, physically, all the above, like I'll start, and this isn't, this could just be like the human experience, but it's like, have a hard time concentrating. A lot of the symptoms that I had during my concussion were auditory based. And so I might have trouble like picking up on conversations in a crowded space. It's not like this heavy thing that it was, and it doesn't like shut my brain down, but I'll still have like some lingering symptoms. And then, the monsters for me, that are, they walked hand in hand with my experience, which was I crashed, bummer. I just moved to a new state where I didn't know anyone, bummer. Every day that I'm not on my bike is a day that I'm not making money, because it was like kind of that level of like, you gotta make it this year. You got enough, you can just barely pay rent, and so then you're gonna blow their doors off and get some more money. So like every day that I wasn't riding was, just watching my future kind of go down the drain. And I also had to stay in Massachusetts because that's where my state sponsored healthcare was. And so my family was in Virginia. And so it was like, just that aside was like, could cause you to be pretty depressed or anxious, that you're just like stuck in bed. Um, Combined with physical and chemical changes that happen in concussion. Like it's a very real thing to struggle with anxiety and depression. And so, it was a little bit of a perfect storm, but like, my monsters really came out in the eating disorder. Like it's pretty common in athletes to like look for control, or, lose the thing that they're going for, and try to find control in other ways. And so, it's not because I've done the work and continued to do the work, and like have freaking reminders all the time that like, my monsters, they don't go away, but I could live with them. It's much more of like, again, very grossly overgeneralizing, but I think of it as like, yeah, I tweaked my back a few years ago, but if I wake up and do a couple like down dogs and some twists, some sun salutations, I can get through the day no problem. But if I were to repeatedly not address it, it would build up, and then all of a sudden I'm not able to kind of like, function. It's kind of the analogy that I kind of go through. But like the motivation, you asked about motivation to get on the bike or go to work. I it's pretty rare that I lack motivation to train, or lack motivation to ride.
Dude, I
Or
follow
even to
you on
work.
Strava. I follow you on Strava. You ride a lot, so you're motivated. There's no
Yeah,
question.
yeah, and I mean, you know, it's something where so people go to school to, you know, go to school, learn things for their profession. And then some people really like what they do, so they go back to school to continue their education and then get to work in their field. I freaking did my master's doctorate with the amount of time that I was riding and committed to racing and studying the sport and, all that. And so for me, there's a lot of reasons why I love riding my bike, but part of it is like I'm just doing what I really enjoy doing and I worked really hard for, and there's a real like, start the day, open like blank slate. If I go out and do my bike ride and like perform the intervals well, or you know can like move the ball forward in some of my technical skills, or get to have a really fun social experience with a friend, or escape the fog of the city and climb up above the cloud, like that's a really cool box to tick in the day. And then it's like, cool, pressure's off, like day's already great.
Yeah.
And so then you can go to work and then be more present with your partner, or any of those things. And So that's one reason why it's like super easy to get on the bike. There's also the like, I have I mean, there was a year and a half where the bike was like not going to be part of my life anymore. Um, and so just the gratitude of being able to go move my body, with, some level of grace and speed, is pretty cool. And then there's also like, I realize that this could totally be like, no, babe, like it's actually like meditation for me. Like, no, it's really good for my mental health. But like, truly,
Oh
there's
yeah.
there's a there's a mindfulness that happens when it's like, you know, I choose to ride without music, and so when it's like, all right, I need to do, you know, 12 minutes at, you know, these watts, I hit the button, and then it's just this total like dialed in, focused on breathing, awareness of my body. Like, am I activating my glutes? Is my rear chain going? Like, watching my heart rate, and then like, yes, this hurts, but it doesn't hurt. Like, why are we all this really good stuff that is way more fun to be, I guess, fun to be mindful in that way and have this like mindfulness practice than it would be to just like sit in silence and do that,
Yeah, meditate or
in a
something.
more like, yeah, which is important, totally important, and it's definitely a practice that, I've used a lot to great success, for just, being more in touch with what's going on. As it's kind of like me cracking my back in the morning, like kind of like, okay, dialing in, checking in. But I get to also do that on the bike, and that's really cool. And then the last reason, that it's easy to go ride is, I just turned 34, so I'm eligible. I could like do a technical masters race. Feeling
Oh boy.
old, and
Oh boy.
and I know,
Everyone in Masters would hate
and I have
you.
totally,
Yeah.
So
and I have a lot
what
of I have. Go
what
ahead.
level are you racing at now?
Um,
It,
I guess pro
Yeah. You
pro,
know,
pro
still pro,
level.
still
Got
pro.
one. Yeah.
Ben, you touched on a
Mhm.
lot of things there.
Um,
One of the things
yeah.
that I think a lot of cyclists can relate to, like I always tell my wife, like you're saying, do I say it's good for my mental health? But I tell my wife, it's like it's my therapy, it's my church. It's just I and when you go out in the morning, to your point, it's like the rest of the day is just so easy. And yeah, it's just then nothing's going to get you down on that day. It's like the pressure's off, you feel great, you got this incredible workout in. And even if it wasn't incredible, it's still you're doing something fun outside. It's it's a great experience. And so I think a lot of our listeners could really relate to that. One thing I did want to ask you about, though, when I was listening to the original,
Mhm.
was so there you talked about your eating disorder, and you mentioned again here, and the
Mhm.
so many cyclists obsess on weight. And so
Mhm.
curious, prior to your TBI, was there any um, uh, eating disorder or any desire to, do something radical with your diet? I mean, all of us, competitive cyclists, have to be very careful about what they eat. But then there's also people that take it to this extreme level. And, you know, the sport is about watts per kilo. You can build your watts, and there's a point where you kind of plateau. So then you start looking at your kilos and how do you get how can I improve my diet or do this other thing that's going to get our weight down? I think a lot of competitive cyclists, we've had people on our podcasts in the past that have eating disorders as well. And it was originally fueled by either a desire to look a certain way or a desire to get up the hill faster. So did prior to
Mhm.
your TBI, did you have any eating disorders?
I think that, there's definitely, um, depending on your circles, and I think it's been changing in the past few years. Depending on your circles, it's it's a pretty like messed up, in my opinion, like pretty messed up, like oh, I'm getting fat. Like, no, you're not. You're a fucking
Right.
Cat 1 cyclist, dude. Like, eat the fucking cupcake.
Yeah.
And it really, and then, and that insecurity can be put on other people.
Yep.
And then it's just not it's just not good. And so, I can speak to the male experience. It happens more often than it should in, on the teams that I was on. Um, and like, so that said, and when I was, I guess, going from like, I did cat 5 to cat 2 in a season.
Yeah.
And in that, it was like 2008-ish to 2010, that like the conversation wasn't great around it. It was still like, trying to be fat adapted and, doing big long rides and, seeing what other people were doing and how they looked. And you're like, well, I want to be where they are. So if I look like them, then I must be getting on the right track.
Better.
And that didn't go well. And I didn't have the awareness that it was like bad, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I also didn't have the awareness that it was probably affecting my performance. I just happened to like have enough talent to like get through.
Yeah.
And then there was a big pivotal moment. There's this dude, Peter Sagan. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah.
3-time world champion, seven-time green jersey wearer.
Yeah. He's done a few
Um,
things.
an interviewer asked him, Peter, like, how much do you weigh? Like, you're a big guy and you're like, beating these guys up these climbs or whatever. And he's like, forever, how much to go this fast? Right. And so that was just such a like, bing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He's big, strong dude. And he eats to fuel his body
Right.
to go as fast as he goes. And like the number on the scale doesn't mean shit. And so that was like a huge, just like, wow, light bulb. And so that was like 2014. And so then it was just all about like, I'm eating so I can get through my workouts so that I can be recovered, so that I can work out harder, so that I can kick your ass.
Right.
Like, I want to be strong. And it was backed up. I felt better all the time. I was putting out good numbers. And what really changed is that, I spent a better part of 5 years cultivating this super high level body. And then when I lost it after my accident, I just was just at a loss of like, well, I don't want to lose all the work that I gained. And so I don't want to gain weight.
Okay.
Even in the relative nature of like, I look back on it and I can totally see why I felt that way. But I also am just like, what's the fucking point? Like, who cares? I care. And so it was
Yeah.
never about like, it wasn't about getting small. In the beginning, it wasn't about getting small. It was about not losing what I had gained. Which, if it was like, I could see if it was only going to be a 2 or 3 week thing, that mentality, but it wasn't a 2 week thing. And even though I recognized that it wasn't a 2 week thing, I didn't make any changes. And then there's also an element of like, very quickly, for me at that time, it wasn't about, a brain injury is a very invisible injury.
Yeah.
You look fine.
Yeah.
You're not fine. Nothing is working. And so there was like a, part of me was like, I'm suffering, people can't see it. And then this is like, when the monsters were pretty big and had a good hold on me, it's like, well, then I'll look messed up.
Oh.
Validate how I feel. I feel small. So like, it's kind of like, not to get too heavy, but it's like, what's the point? Like, I'm not doing anything. I can't do anything. So when I lost the motivation of I'm eating to fuel to perform. I didn't know how to eat to fuel to live. I couldn't like connect that.
Mm-hmm.
So ended up getting to a point where I had to be hospitalized for a few months.
Wow.
And it took me, really kind of breaking all the way down to the bottom to start climbing out. And a lot of it has to be like with mental health stuff. You have to make the first step. I had plenty of people telling me for a while, got to make that step. And I was like, yeah, okay. But I feel pretty bad. And I don't like, this is my coping mechanism, as messed up as it is.
Yeah.
There was an, and I was aware how ignorant I was being, like I don't want to look at it. Like it's right here. It's good, but I'm not going to look at it. So if I don't look at it, then I don't have to address it.
Mm-hmm.
So once I addressed it, I was able to kind of gain tools to address the things that I was numbing out for. So like address the things that were causing me to need that control. And so then I was also able to learn the skills of, fueling for existence and having that be an okay thing. It's like a form of self-care to give yourself, fuel and food. And just because you're not an athlete doesn't mean that you don't, don't deserve to be, you know, be fed and taken care of. And so that's those are the monsters that I kind of have to deal with. Like for
Mm-hmm.
me, when I'm training a lot and doing that thing, like food's easy. I still have that like, yeah, I got to recover so I can keep kicking ass.
Yeah.
Where the monsters get louder, it's like, during the quiet times or like injury times, and that's where the work is really has to get done. Um, so that's my
What
version of it. And then you go ahead.
what form it, I think it's relevant because there are so many. What form did this eating disorder take? Was it just anorexia, bulimia? I mean,
Yeah,
what were
and
you?
anorexia nervosa is like
Yeah,
the clinical term.
Yeah.
yeah.
And and then also like a clinical body dysmorphia. Like I truly couldn't see myself. Like I had a vision of what I saw. And that's just as you get further and further down, it all kind of like gets together. And so like I was eating, I was eating, I was still like, well, I'm getting a lot of volume. Look at all of these like vegetables that I'm eating. Um, but it wasn't like actually full of energy, right? I was eating um, so well, but it wasn't fueling. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's really
Hey,
interesting because the dynamic with people and eating disorders, and then you juxtapose that with the dynamic of being a top level athlete, right? So when you're an athlete, it's all about trying to get the ultimate performance out of your body. Whereas you could understand where, teenage girls or teenage boys that are trying to look a certain way, there's a lot of peer pressure to fall into that. There's all sorts of different reasons why people fall into it.
Totally,
But
totally.
the thing that is really kind of hard to wrap your head around a little bit, and even with some of our previous guests that have these eating disorders and they're high level cyclists, and it's like you to like your aha moment with Sagan, it's like you have to put the fuel in, right? I always, the way I think of it is like it's a fuel tank. You're
Mm-hmm.
just putting stuff in the fuel tank, and then when you get on the bike, you're burning the fuel. And so if you don't have anything in the tank, then there's your performance on the bike is going to suffer. And
yeah.
in this time, were you riding when you weren't able to ride at this time, or were you riding and still having these issues with the eating disorder?
Um, it was like a transition from like sedentary to I was able to walk, and then I was able
Mm-hmm.
to do like trail runs, and then I started riding again.
So you're
But
still in
it
healing
still didn't.
mode. You're
Yeah,
still healing from the brain injury and then dealing with
which
this. Yeah.
Yeah,
my
I
brain
want
didn't
to.
have any freaking glycogen, so it wasn't able to heal itself. Just,
Yeah.
there's
I
connection
want
there.
to. I want to back up something because you said something, and if I heard you right, it actually struck a nerve. I mean, I'm going to share
Mhm.
something here that I've shared with maybe three other people in my life.
Oh,
Um,
Well, it's just three of us
I
here, so no
yeah,
biggie.
yeah.
yeah. So that makes six.
You're doubling.
Um, I believe, and it wasn't a public thing, it wasn't a big deal then, but I believe transitioning from my eighth grade into my freshman year, I have no idea how old I was. It's all by, I go by what school I attended, right? I would say that my freshman year in high school, I was anorexic. I went from kind of this chubby, athletic, but yet, if you will, chubby thing. I grew, and I was thinner, and people were like, "Wow, did you lose weight?" I'm like, "No, I didn't think so." And then all of a sudden, I'm like, "Wow, people are telling me I look good." And then there was some really fucked up stuff going on at home, and hopefully my parents won't listen to this, but there's a fucked up family dynamic, and I literally playing basketball, freshman basketball. I can tell in retrospect, I was starving myself, right? And my point of it, and hopefully this is you said something, and hopefully this is educational and other people pick up on it. I don't want this to become about me, but you said I couldn't see myself, right? And everyone started telling me, you've gone from not looking good to not looking good, and I couldn't see myself. And it wasn't until our school pictures arrived. You take your picture in the freshman year,
Mm.
and then partway through it, the picture arrived, and I opened the envelope and I went, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Right?
Mm.
Because I couldn't see it. I'm looking in the mirror going, "I'm not chubby anymore." Right? And then I saw that picture, and it was like, "What the fuck have I done?" And that it was at that moment, and I'm glad. I don't know why that picture helped me overcome the psychology of it, or the monster, if you will. But that was the trigger for me to
Mm.
get going. So
Mm.
It's
it
kind
was
of
enough about me.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Your motivation was kind of the opposite of Ben's, right? Ben, your motivation was, hey, I'm really sick. I've got problems, and it doesn't look like I have problems. So I want to, in a maybe consciously or subconsciously, I want to just show people that I'm sick. So I'm just going
Mm.
to,
Yeah,
whereas Dave
yeah,
is like the other way, there's so many ways to fall into an eating disorder. And yeah, it's something that I think plagues a lot of people, and kind of like obviously the overriding mental health issue is getting a lot of attention now, thankfully. I
Mm.
think
yeah.
through efforts, your efforts, like obviously the NFL is doing these concussion protocols. They've had several suicides that are related to CTE, and there's a movie with Will Smith. There's all kinds of it's in the general narrative now, and
Mm.
hopefully that will serve as a catalyst for to help people be able to come
Mm.
forward. Like Dave said, he's only told three people, and not that you need to go around telling everybody, but it is something that a lot of people suppress because they're ashamed of it, or whatever reason society doesn't want to hear it. But we're in a different
So
age now, and
yeah,
there's a lot more openness and
and
willingness to engage.
the hard a really hard thing, like speaking. Well, first, Dave, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Proud of you.
Well, top,
The
topical and relevant, right?
Yeah. And another thing that I just really want to touch on quick is, like, I'm really glad that the sport, or sports in general, are like catching on to the fueling part.
Yeah.
And so instead of like, how far can you ride in 5 hours without, how efficient can you be? Now it's like, how can you get 120 grams of carbs in an hour? Like, and we're seeing these performances shoot up, and I'm hoping that, like, people are kind of catching on. Like, yeah, fuel. If your desire is speed
Yeah.
and athletic performance, like, this is how you do it. You know.
Yeah.
So I hope that's really catching on. But, like, a lot of the challenges, you know, some of the initial like budgings of like, well, maybe I should get skinnier. It's like you look at the pro tour guys, especially in a tour.
Yeah.
That's kind of the hardest time for me because I see peak athletic performance and it looks a certain way.
Yes.
And I also want peak athletic performance and if I look like them, you know, it doesn't line up.
Yeah.
I have a job, I have a partner, I have shit that I'm doing. I'm doing different training, less of it. It's not my whole being. And they're like the percentage of the percentage of the percentage of the percent. And the way they look during that race, guys, girls, both,
Yeah.
that's a hyper specific time. And it's probably not healthy.
Yeah.
It's definitely not healthy. That's not a way that you should live your life. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who struggled with that. I struggled with that this year.
Yeah,
I much prefer I prefer the classics where it's like big dudes fucking pedaling hard.
Yes.
Like, yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, you see someone as big as Wout, like he's a big guy,
Yeah.
healthy looking.
So let's move
drop plenty of people
if we can. So I mean, I know it's food disorders big. I'm not minimizing, but I know I want to be sensitive to the time.
Totally.
So let's talk
Totally.
about we're moving forward now, right? So did I hear you before? Did I understand that are you still working with Love Your Brain, or is the Small Monsters Project its own entity and you love your brain, but you're not as, I don't know, are you still putting money that way, or is it your own separate entity going your own way?
Both. It's both of those things.
Yeah.
How was that first setup? Setup?
Yeah, in May we have the Ride for Resilience, and so I put, with the help of the Small Monsters Project, we did the Ride for Resilience, and part of the proceeds raised went to Love Your Brain, and I still represent them as part of that Ride for Resilience team that they've cultivated of athletes who are TBI survivors, and they've been really helpful with me trying to like reach. I'm not trying to steal pieces of the pie. I want to make the pie bigger. I want to have more community and more eyes on it. And I'm definitely not trying to fill the like take any way. Like we're talking about the same thing, but going after different education or different populace. So like if you come to me and aren't finding what you need, like living with after, or looking for more mindfulness practices, or finding resources for your caregiver, Love Your Brain's great for that. I can't be all things for all people. They can't be all things for all people. And so where I'm seeing the direction of the Small Monsters Project going, it's definitely on the same road. We're going north, but I'm just trying to like go through this town in this, and in this, and so just trying to talk to different people and really try to reach an audience that I can speak to very viscerally, so that I can do a better job at it.
Yeah. So what are the ways that that the Small Monsters Project is engaging with the community beyond the Ride for Resilience? What else are you doing?
So right now we have three kind of ways that we are following our mission, which is providing education and resources about concussion and TBI, and then also helping to reduce the stigma around mental health challenges. So one of the ways that we're doing it is in a month, I'm going to get on the road and do the USCX series. And at each of those stops, and as many stops as in between, I'm going to give out the Small Monsters Project grant. And it's going to be providing baseline concussion testing to teams, focusing on youth teams, but equal opportunity for everyone. And then having a clinic so I can tell my story, and generally just like having that conversation early with people, so that it's not this like I need to check Google or whatever. And then while also, also using the platform of, I mean, I do ride my bike because I love it, but I also want to be fast and show that it's, you can have a concussion, you can struggle with mental health, but there is hope, there is a path forward. It doesn't have to be like an end point. It can be a transition point.
So you're,
And
I
so,
looked at, if I can, I just want to clarify. So we highlighted, I was reading your newsletter and you said upcoming
mhm,
events. And I, I'm looking, okay, then I saw the 4 or 5 races that were listed on there. Maybe there were more, I don't know. But that
mhm.
isn't just about you racing. You're going there, you're
No,
racing, and at that point, you are doing something on behalf of the Small Monsters Project and the betterment of this of the mental health issue, right?
I'd flip that. I'm going to do projects that are for the betterment of mental health and concussion education. Um, I'm also happening to race at those races, but I want to
Okay.
go to where, clearly the community is invested in cycling, and at those events it gathers more people so that I can expand the reach. If yeah, it's just efficiency of resources
So
Awesome.
are your talks actually at the race venue, like the day of, or is it like
it,
at a bike shop or a community center, maybe in advance?
it all depends. It all depends on what works best for that community.
Yeah. I think
So
it's
it's
really,
going to be a case by case.
yeah, I think it's really important your story about how you got your injury because so many youngsters, they get on the bike, they start to get some strength, and they have no fear. And the fact that
Mhm.
the way your injury happened, it wasn't some crazy rock garden that took you out, it was just falling into sand. And so, I was involved with a NICA team for we did 3 seasons with it, and then I handed it off to somebody else. But a lot of the kids have this, uh, you know, this unrealistic idea of descending, and they see the videos, they think they can just get on this bike and do it because they're young. And it's like, that was something that we really had to check these kids. It's like, hey, the person you're watching that is inspiring you, that's awesome that it's inspiring you, but there's a skill set that requires years to develop to get to that level. And to just hop on a bike and immediately think you're going to go do that, you do want to push yourself, but at the same time you want to be responsible. It's a fine line. It's a hard thing to coach with kids. And you find
Mhm.
kids being the other way also. Some kids don't have it at all. They're not
Mhm.
interested in descending and pushing themselves like that. But yeah, I think that story is really important to share with the younger riders,
E-
and even us older riders too, because
Equally important,
anytime.
though, it's that equally important, I think, is it's those same kids that think they're invincible, or youngsters, if you will, whatever, and that will do that. And in the event that something happens, they're the ones that are just going to pick up their bike, get back on their bike. They're going to start riding. They're not going to tell their coach. They're not going to tell their mom.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell their dad. They're just going to go, "Oh, I'm fine." And all the other friends that watch them
Mhm.
crash are going to say, "Just get up and go," you know. And
and
that's
and
why.
and yeah, an important part that I did miss in the grant is like coaches and parents are going to be provided with return to sport, like an overview. All of this is under the asterisk of like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a
Uh-huh.
doctor, and
Right.
this is all
Yes.
this is all like evaluative, not diagnostic. And the top line on all of these is like, if you hit your head, you should contact a medical professional. But there, in the concussion world, sometimes it can take a few days to like have symptoms manifest, right? So there's an education about like what those symptoms look like. There's an education about timelines, because like, you know, if you sprain your ankle, yeah, you could probably like tough it out and get back to play sooner. The timeline for brain injury and concussion is longer than you would want it to be. And, for kids, it could be like half of a season,
Right.
where you're not being socialized, you're not hanging out with your friends. Um, for adults who have jobs, like it could be a month, a month before you're able to perform at work again. And so just presenting those timelines, not as like a, ooh, be careful, but it's like just a known thing. Like if you like, oh, doc, I broke my leg. Well, it's 6 to 8 weeks, right? So it's like, oh, I have a concussion. Well, it's 28 days
Yeah.
if you do it right. And again, it's that balance of like giving it the gravity that it's due, because it is important, because it is your brain, but also not making it something where it's preventing you from living your life, from doing the things that we love to do, because it's like you can recover from it. It's my while my story is important, I'm not the rule. There's so many things that in hindsight, it's like, man, I could have taken months off this thing had I known what I know now. Had I had the information, it could have changed everything. Would I change it? Not necessarily, because it's gotten me to where I am now. And so, yeah, I want to have people have the things in front of them so that it can, maybe not go down some of the paths that I did. You wouldn't have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's awesome. I think very important work you're doing, and I applaud you for that. With the Small Monsters Project, are there companies that have stepped in to support, to fund these grants, or otherwise? Is there anybody that you want to really just acknowledge as good supporters of the
Yeah.
Small Monsters Project?
Yeah. I mean, so I still work for a company called Or Not, and they're, allowing me to kind of take a step back there and go, part time with them, and they're continuing to like, freaking make the jerseys that are a significant fundraiser, so that everyone can, wear their small monsters on their sleeves. And I definitely I do not take for granted that I'm 34 years old and can still have a part-time job, and the other two part-time jobs I have are pedaling bikes and altruism.
Yeah.
And then Richie Bikes they've been with me through the whole thing. Like at no point did they waver in their support, even when I was like, hey Ferg, I don't think I'm ever going to ride a bike again. He's like, okay, no problem, we support you. Or hey Ferg, I think I want to race World Cups. Okay, we support you.
Yeah.
And so they've been awesome. And then, the quick hits are beyond that are Smith, Schramm, Hunt Wheels has been amazing, as a newer part of the program. Very much like not performance based. They're like, we don't want to pressure you for performance because you already do that enough yourself. We just want you to be someone that we would be stoked for our kids to meet at a race. And I'm like, cool. That's my goal too.
That's cool.
And then a newer ad is Bivo. They do stainless steel bottles, and they're a climate neutral 1% for the planet company, and they're super supportive of the things that we're trying to do. And then we've had some really awesome people in the Bay Area. So we're doing to fundraise. I'm putting on a bike ride. It's the Small Monsters Sportive, on August 19th. And so we've had some really cool people in our community step up and donate.
August, so where
and so that
August, where is that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So August 19th, it's a community event. It's just a fun bike ride. And it's going to leave from the Or Not store in San Francisco. There's going to be a road option, there's going to be a dirt option. And then we both leave similar times. There's going to be a well-stocked rest stop. Bay Area Bicycle Law is supporting that
Nice.
that rest stop. And then we'll finish at Sports Basement in the Presidio for lunch and hangouts. And there's also going to be a community open to the community talk about concussion and mental health, led by me. And I'm hoping we're going to try to have someone in the medical community speak, because it sounds way better when they say the medical words than me pointing out the medical words on a PowerPoint. But again, it's like, well, because of my background and at being a bike racer and what I've done for the past 10 years, like I do have a national level community, but it's super important to like look at home too. And so that's a big part of this ride is like trying, if I can, there's so many cyclists in the Bay Area, and if I can maybe get one or two from each of the communities to come and have the information, and they can share it with their communities, and so that if you're on a ride and your friend falls, that it's not like, what do I do? You know where to go. If you don't know what to do, you can come to the Small Monsters Project and find out, get some resources. And if I'm able to have enough money, like get everyone to come to a talk. Like I'll do a talking clinic with your team.
Right.
And so that way we're changing the conversation or making a conversation about specifically concussion. And then also just like showing it's okay to have your monsters. And so longer term, I want to do like a TEDx speaker type series, talk to student athletes at colleges, talk to, more than just people in cycling, 5-year plan. I'd love to be on Good Morning America, talking about mental health and concussions. And so there's definitely opportunity, but I want to speak to my people first and try to make an impact there, and then only grow.
Well, it's good stuff, Ben. And we touched on a lot of really heavy stuff here. And then it's good to hear how you're utilizing it, putting it forward, and initially the cycling community is going to benefit, but hopefully you reach that goal and you end up on Good Morning America. Before we get you out of here, we do the silly thing. It's a pop culture thing. And last time you were on, you didn't get to do it. So not like it's some huge thing, but we talk a lot in a very specific lane when you're on the podcast. And so this kind of opens up some pop culture stuff. So
sure.
All right, no wrong answers here. Hip hop or rock and roll?
Hip hop.
Country or blues?
No, wrong answer. No wrong, and neither.
Okay. Stones or Beatles?
Beatles.
Mm-hmm. AC/DC or U2?
Hip hop.
No, that's so like, U2 obviously kind of changed the game for like stadium. So you asked me these music questions. I was a music major in college and I wanted to be a producer. And so like these are actually questions that I have some knowledge about. So AC/DC has really cool cultural impact, where they're just like kind of like, middle finger, whatever. And yet they're getting played on top 40 stations. Like that's pretty cool to see.
Pretty
that
cool.
Like that transition. But also while I wouldn't necessarily choose U2, they, I don't know, played in front of like 800,000 people at these, like that's pretty crazy to have that. And if you bought an iPod in whatever year that was, like it came on your iPod.
It came with you too,
I guess
right?
Yeah.
AC/DC.
All right. Though. Yeah. AC/DC's, it's something visceral almost. Like when, it's just something it's wild, but I like U2 too. Okay. Kid Rock or Kanye?
Oh, geez. Kanye's so canceled. He's so canceled.
We're not talking about political, social issues. We're just talking about music.
His early stuff.
Kanye, stuff. For sure. Yeah. Okay. And then Bruno Mars or Taylor Swift?
Geez, we can't just ignore cultural stuff. I think they both do a great job. Gosh, look at me walking right down the center line.
Uh-huh.
You ready for this? As I tiptoe, both of those two have done a great job at bringing different genres into, like, bringing them from left or right into center. So like Taylor did a great job about bringing like the country music genre into public consciousness, and then she's also used, her platform to have a lot of really good things to say.
Yes.
Her recent relationships um, aside, she's obviously been just like a super badass woman and showed that you can be a badass woman. Bruno Mars is able to bring, like, I guess like funk, R&B, um, very like a whole culture into the top 40, where him and
Yep.
Anderson .Paak are like absolutely killing the game. And it's like, oh, people like bop into like, disco, R&B, like bringing that like classic, like, doo-wop style into, you know into
Hey,
yeah, and the stuff that they're doing musically is unreal.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. Somehow he made it onto my playlist, and I'm a rock and roll guy, so it's like, there you go.
Yeah, well,
You got to acknowledge game.
yeah, to Ben's point, genre bending artists, both of them. So, well, we're gonna let you
Yeah.
off the hook there. So, good answer. Maybe politics in your future. All right, now we're gonna move on out of music. We're gonna go rom-com or action.
um I'm gonna say action every time until I get forced to watch the rom-com and go like, man, that was a really good movie.
Yeah, yeah. I always got to be talked into the rom-com myself. Yeah. All right, Die Hard or Shawshank?
And then you're like, oh, Shawshank.
Yeah. Talladega
Not,
Nights or
I wouldn't choose
Hangover?
it every day.
Oh, Shawshank?
Oh,
Jeez.
I'm bad with that one. If it comes on the TV
Well,
and it's like an hour in, I'll just watch the rest of it. I mean,
yeah,
I love that movie.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right,
Talladega Nights or Hangover.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say Talladega Nights. I
Yeah.
just want to go fast.
Yeah.
I've never seen either.
If you're
Never
not
seen
first, you're
either.
last. And Baby Jesus, there's a bunch of like there's so many just nuggets in there. So good. But Hangover was one of those movies, like when I first saw it, I was just like, oh, everyone has to see this movie. That's how I felt. But anyway, okay. So moving on. De Niro or Denzel?
Denzel.
Yeah. Holly
Remember the
Berry or
Titans?
Jennifer? Oh, go ahead.
Remember the Titans was like such a like pivotal point in my
Thank
in
you.
my childhood.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was an incredible movie. Also Training Day.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Training Day too. He's a wild man. Okay, Holly Berry or Jennifer Aniston?
Too
He,
young
he's just
for
he's
Too
just
this.
young.
hoping he's just he doesn't want to give an answer in case his partner's listening.
Uh, well, he's too
Well,
young. These are two old broads, I guess, at this point.
well, like when they were like in their pomp, like
Yeah.
I was like a kid. Um, I didn't
Yes.
really watch Friends. Uh, I mean, I guess I've seen more of Jennifer Aniston's work, so
All right.
I can speak to her.
But I'm just going to say, apropos of nothing, but wasn't the movie with Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton, wasn't that called Monsters?
Monsters Ball.
Monsters Ball? One of the
Yeah.
best. There you go. Fascinating movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Endurance or sprint?
Both. I'm a cyclocross athlete.
I love it. Best answer. Power or spin to win? Don't say both.
Um,
Both.
Power.
Okay, power. All right. Now we take a left turn. Baseball or basketball? Do you care about either
Basketball.
one? Yeah.
Um, in the very like bandwagon, like watching The Last Dance was incredible.
Yes.
That kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
I love that.
Baseball, you're getting paid. You're getting paid a lot of money to stand around in a field.
There's a lot to baseball. But but
Moneyball was a great movie. I get it.
yeah,
But I'm very participatory, right? So like I would have more fun playing basketball, so then I can relate to it more,
yeah.
seeing what those guys do. But like baseball, the nuance is very lost on me because there's not much hustle. It's a lot of
Thank you.
nothing and then
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like hurry up and wait, but it's, yeah, it's a different game for sure. I don't disagree. Basketball's amazing. It's a great spectator sport. It's fun to play. Okay. Offense or defense?
Defense.
Mm-hmm. Back to basketball. Steph Curry or LeBron?
Scottie Pippen.
The Last Dance. I heard something about Scottie Pippen. He's a terrible tipper. He'll go
Because
to
he
have
wasn't he wasn't paid enough.
yeah, $3,000 or $4,000 dinner with a bunch of his mates that he stiffs the waiter. That just
Right.
turned me on Pippen. He was an amazing player though. Oh my gosh. Okay. 60s or 80s?
80s. It's having a moment again.
Mm-hmm. Give me your favorite car from the 80s.
I couldn't even do that.
The Chrysler K car,
Friggin'
maybe.
DeLorean.
There you go. DeLorean. All right. Good. All right. Last one. Hot or cold?
Because I live in San Francisco now, and like
Mhm.
our summer has been like a high of 52. I could use some hot.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I could really use some hot. But it's acknowledging that like the human condition is to have short memory. And so like if it was hot for 2 weeks, I'd be like, oh man, I could really use some cold. I forget what it's like to be cold.
Yeah. For me, it's like nothing better than just getting up in the morning, throwing on a set of bibs and a jersey and heading out the door. That's the best. You got to have all the layers and all that. I mean, obviously we do it and we love it. And you can have great days in cold weather, that's for sure. But the sweet spot for me, bibs and a jersey and go.
Or not makes like these awesome off the bike shorts. And
Yeah.
I can't wear them ever. Because my tiny violin, I live in San Francisco and it's temperate all year. I have to wear a sweatshirt no matter what time I leave the house. Like I get that. But growing up like East Coast in New England, when it's like, yeah, there was 2 weeks where it was like the low was 85. Like that just isn't something that I have to deal with right now.
Well, Ben, I gotta give you praise here. That is the most thoughtful pop culture responses that we've had since doing them. We're on episode 109. You're a very thoughtful guy, and we appreciate that. Let's let everybody know, how do we interact with Ben? You have a website, you got the Small Monsters Project. I'm sure you're on Instagram. You want to share those with everybody?
Yeah, so I'm both at Ben Jam Fred if you want to see more like the athlete, human, cats, food, just like the typical stuff. And then there's also at the Small Monsters Project, where it's more of like the works that we're doing and the education that we want to put out into the world. And I think it's important to say that like we're going down kind of this concussion path, but there's so much opportunity. And so if there's anyone listening who's in the mental health space and wants to get involved, I'm all ears. I have all of the desire to go forward, and if you are willing to help or know someone who's willing to help, like a big part of the success of this program is going to be getting it in front of people. And so if you want to help get it in front of people, if you want to help it, continue, like the more I'm able to just for like, not, if I can continue to grow the thing so that I can put more time into the thing, you better dang well believe that it's going to get in front of a lot of people. Like that's the motivation that I'm coming with it. So if you want to get involved, holler at me, thesmallmonstersproject.com. My phone number's on there. You can email me. We have an awesome team of volunteers who are really want to see this thing go. So yeah, those are the spots. If you're going to be at any of the USDX races in Roanoke or Rochester or Baltimore or
Waltham,
really rad. Going to Trek Cup this year, I do want to meet all of you. That is truly one of my favorite things is saying hello, having a good time, sharing a high five. Come say
Yeah.
hi.
Awesome. All right.
And
Well,
listen, it's not much, but we'll make sure we get the word out on our podcast and on our
Love it.
Facebook page. I'm on a team, a local team. I'll get the word out there. I do a weekly email to about 900 some odd people. I'll put the word out there. So yeah, just know that we're stoked and so impressed and inspired by all the stuff that you do. We'll help you in whatever little way we can. And I'll try to
Yeah,
be
thanks,
there on the
guys.
19th. I'll be there on the 19th. I try. I'm getting back on the 16th, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure
Yeah.
what the future holds, but if I can, I'll make that one.
yeah, maybe we'll go
Try
together,
anyways.
Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be
Cool.
great.
And keep an eye out at or not, or sign up for their emails, because this year's Small Monsters jersey is going to be launched as a pre-order in like a month.
Oh, great.
And very biased opinion, it's freaking sick. It's so cool. It's definitely like a jersey that's cool, independent of the message behind it. So keep an eye out there as well. And all of the proceeds from that jersey will help the work that we're trying to do.
Rad. All right.
See,
Thank you.
that's the moment I wish my wife was just in the room. I wish I was on speakerphone so she could have heard that. So she would have felt now that I understand why you're spending money on more cycling clothes, but
Yeah.
I'll have to. But anyways,
Yeah. Well, all
I'll
right. So, Ben, it's been a pleasure. As I said, I missed the first one, but it's great having you on. I look forward to meeting you one day. We do have a little bit
Yeah.
of sorry to cut you off. We do have a little bit of business to take care of. We opened up this option of having subscribers, and our first subscriber was Ken Lunsford. We're giving call outs. And when we first started, we weren't sure if we were going to call anybody out, but Ken Lunsford was our first subscriber. We've now had a second subscriber, David Seton, previous guest. And so we appreciate you guys. If you're interested in subscribing, you go to cyclejerkspodcast.buzzsprout.com and you just click on the subscribe button. We appreciate any type of feedback that you want to share with us. There's opportunities for feedback. We also just launched our own YouTube channel. So look for us on YouTube. And I think that's about all the business I have for everybody. But thank you so much, Ben. It takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, and turning this situation all around into such a positive, not just for yourself, but for the community at large. It's really impressive what you're doing, and yeah, we support you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Episode
see you guys.
109 in the books. Bye-bye.
Bye.